Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the webinar. This is the webinar, The Future of Work, How Prepared Are You? This webinar is organized by the BI EMBA Alumni Group together with the BI Alumni Network. This webinar is part of the webinar series that we had at BI, and it's organized by BI Innovation and Outreach Division. Please welcome our guests, Lucy Jacobi Haugen and Benjamin Pring, that will have this session today. Thank you very much.
Hello, and thank you. Thanks very much for the introduction, Adriana. Hello, everyone. I wanted to start by welcoming members of our global BI community to what I hope will be, and I promise to be, an educational and thought-provoking webinar examining the future of work. I hope that you will establish how prepared are you for the future of work by the end of this session. So a little bit of information about me, who am I, and how I'm related to this webinar. So I am a proud graduate of the 2018 Global MBA program at BI, so the Executive Education Program. Excellent program. If you're thinking of doing it, I highly encourage you to get in touch with Adriana or other members of the Executive Education Program to find out more information about this program. Post my program at BI, I was brought in and I am servicing now as one of the founding members of the Executive MBA Alumni Board Committee, which was founded in 2019. And so the goal of this board is to help build connections, ongoing connections between our BI alumni and our BI community. And so over the course of this year, and 2020, we've adapted some of our programs, and this year we will be focusing on hosting some educational events and programs for our alumni and our community. So we are very excited that you are partaking in this program today. In addition, outside of BI, I also work for Cognizant. So to tell you a little bit about Cognizant, Cognizant is a global technology service leader offering world-class digital solutions. And Cognizant is founded in New Jersey, and we have a global footprint with over 280,000 employees worldwide. In Nordics, we have offices in Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. And in Norway, we have 4 offices. It's a great place to work. So if you are interested, you can go to cognizant.no and find out a little bit more about Cognizant. However, through my work at Cognizant, where I head up learning and development, I was introduced to Benjamin Pring and the Center for Future of Work. And Benjamin does a lot of great research with the Center for Future of Work. And so I'm very excited that he is here with us today. And I wanted to introduce Benjamin Pring, our Vice President of Thought Leadership at Cognizant. So let's take it away and introduce Ben.
Hi, Lucy. Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Benjamin.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you so much. And Benjamin, you are joining us from Boston.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate you making the time to be with us today in the BI community. Benjamin, if you wouldn't mind, would you just be able to share a little bit more information on the Center for the Future of Work and also a little bit more information on yourself as well?
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Well, the Center for the Future of Work is a group within Cognizant. As Lucy says, Cognizant's a big organization, 300,000 people around the world, engineers, coders, all sorts of people doing, creating and managing digital solutions for clients. And my group, the Center for the Future of Work, is a think tank, is the best way to think about it, where we create points of view, thought leadership assets, books, white papers, videos, where we try and share a point of view about what our clients' future of work is going to be like. driven by changes in technology, driven by changes in business and economics, and then more broadly, changes in society and culture. So we have a kind of charter to really look a little bit further down the road, if you like, than some of the more day-to-day work that we would be doing with a bank or an airline or an insurance company, and to think about what's going to be on their radar, how they should react to that, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges. And of course, we look a lot at what that means to employees within an organization. What are the opportunities individuals face? How can we optimize teams and groups and business units to be able to go after these new future work opportunities? So that's kind of what we do.
Okay, thanks for that. Question, Benjamin. I have to ask I guess the pandemic question. So you've been looking at the trends, different trends for a long time across, as you mentioned, business, technology, and society. And so wondering, throughout that research of the different trends, how the unforeseen pandemic has impacted what you might have foreseen prior in terms of trends.
Yeah, well, obviously, the pandemic is the great variable now. It's the great disruptor, if you like. It's humbling for people like me who have lived in a world of predictions all of our professional careers that really nobody saw this coming at all. If you roll the tape back a year or so, nobody really foresaw then how fundamental and existential the change created in our world by the coronavirus was going to be. I'm going to talk about this in some detail about just how existential the challenge is because of this strange little thing that's floating around us, hopefully not too close to where you're sitting right now. But I think it's a really big deal, Lucy. I mean, I think this is the biggest challenge society, the world has faced probably since the Second World War. So probably for everybody listening to this now on this Zoom call now, this is the biggest deal we've had to face. And of course, we're doing a lot of things in the here and now, short-term things, including, you guys all being back at home, working, listening to this from maybe your childhood bedroom rather than being in an apartment or a flat in the city. Things like that, really up to very macro things about how we organize the world, how we trade with each other, how we move goods and services and people and capital all around the world. All of these things are kind of up for discussion. So, no, this is a very, very big deal, and it's very uncertain, really, what the long-term consequences of this are going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess it's constantly changing and evolving as, the virus seems to also change and evolve. So obviously there is more research to be done in this area. And that is definitely something that we will continue to monitor, and your group specifically will continue to monitor. So on this call today, we have many students, and I'm sure they want to know what the future of work looks like for them, so they can prepare accordingly. So would you be able to share some of your insights and your trends that you see in the future to help prepare them effectively for the future of work and some of the trends?
Sure, let me do that, Lucy. Let me get my screen shared with you. Can you see that?
Yes, perfect.
Great. Happy to walk through some of the sort of underlying trends that we see, some of the impacts this is going to have on jobs. Obviously, many of you are thinking, if you're not already lining up a kind of a role beyond BI, what the jobs of the future should be, what the job of your future should be, what are the opportunities, what are the kind of big waves of the future. And I'll certainly share some thoughts on that. But as I say, this kind of strange little thing is making this all very uncertain. So I'll certainly bear that in mind as I talk to you. I mean, just to stand back from this and set out a sort of overriding thought, I'm reminded of this famous quote that you may know. that there are sort of decades when nothing happens and then weeks when decades happen. And we're sort of living in weeks now when decades of change are happening. You know, are we ever going to go back on a plane like that again? Sit on a plane like that again? Are we ever going to go back into an office like that again? Are we even ever going to shake hands again? Again, a year ago, asking those questions would have seemed absolutely crazy, but they're really the questions I'm sure you're asking with your family and your friends and in the work that you do and the studying you do. These are kind of, as I say, big existential questions. I think, again, if you step back from what's going on at the moment, and I think as a framing perspective, again, this is an important statement to think about, that basically what we're seeing in an accelerated manner is that everything that can go online is going online. I mean, we're meeting now online, aren't we? Like this, you're being educated online. Lots of aspects of society haven't really been online as perhaps we'd imagined. Healthcare wasn't really as online as we'd imagined, but now probably in this year, 50, 60, 70% of health consults, certainly initial ones, are going to be online through a telemedicine application. You know, so tech is becoming completely central to our world. Obviously, it has become increasingly important in the last few years, but in a way, we've only kind of really scratched the surface of where this is going to go in the next few years. Keep that thought in mind. Keep that thought in mind as you're thinking about what I'm saying and what you should be doing in reacting to what I'm saying, because tech is really the grand story of the rest of my working life. I would say the rest of your working life as well. And of course, all of the accelerated change we're experiencing, as I say, we've been experiencing this for some time already. This is Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, who said a few years ago, this is from 2017, that the pace of change has never been this fast, but will never be this slow again. That was a very prescient comment a couple of years ago, but was absolutely true. And COVID just further accelerates this kind of brave new world that we're moving into. New technologies, 5G, blockchain, quantum, things that you may be hearing about, things you may be interested in, things you may be working on. These technologies are radically changing the opportunities, the threats, radically changing the future of everybody's work as we move forward. And in the midst of all of this change, pre and post COVID, this, I think, is the great story of our time. The emergence of artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, automation. And you know this because you're living and seeing this every day, that the robots aren't coming, they're already here. If you drive a modern car, it's built by robots. If you're talking to Alexa, Siri, you're talking to artificial intelligence. Perhaps you've seen the new Atlas videos from Boston Dynamics, where Atlas is dancing to an old 60s rock and roll song. I mean, it's really mind-blowing, because this isn't science fiction anymore. This is not a Steven Spielberg movie. This is real. And this kind of technology is going to be coming into our world more and more quickly, more and more materially, and really, really is a very, very big deal. I think if we fast forward 100 years and read history books, if people still write books or read books in 100 years, maybe it'll just be a chip implant by then. But the history of now is being written, and it's really all about this type of technology, I believe. This is what our kids and our grandchildren in 100 years' time will be reading about, this kind of technology emerging. In some ways, though, the story of Atlas, if you've seen those videos that are all up on YouTube, is a bit of a kind of distraction. It's a bit of a head fake, if you like, because the real story of AI and machine learning is better exemplified by the other little screenshot here of a company in New York called X.AI, a little, startup company that's creating very clever software that schedules meetings. That's all it does. It schedules meetings. Rather than us exchanging half a dozen emails to set up a time for us to meet, I just say to my software, fix a time with Adriana for us to meet as soon as possible. And it just goes off and automatically does that little task. And so it's not the Atlas robot, it's not the Terminator, it's just very, very smart software automating a task that, frankly, we could live without. And so that's the real story of AI that we're going to see diffuse into all sorts of work areas, all sorts of business processes and systems and tasks. And in doing so, it's going to change what we as humans do. It's going to change the jobs of the future, because this type of software is going to take tasks away from humans. Some of you may have seen this movie and know this, the story of DeepMind and its battle against one of the world's best players of the ancient Asian game of Go. If you haven't seen this movie, check this out, because it's really interesting fly on the wall documentary that sort of explains how the underlying technology of AI has been developed, has matured, and now has sort of come into our world in a real way. If you're following this very closely, you'll know that that same technology, which was initially developed to play a game, is now being developed and deployed to work in the world of medical research. And the very, very cutting edge of AI at the moment is in this area called protein folding. Taking something that humans had been trying to crack, a problem that humans have been trying to solve for 40 years, and cracking it in a matter of months. Again, showing how fast this underlying technology is developing. And again, if you're following this very closely, you know all about GPT-3 from this organization called OpenAI, funded by Elon Musk. Software that can write human-like text in a way that's far beyond the famed Turing test. If you know about the Turing test, you couldn't distinguish whether a human had written this paragraph or this sentence or this chapter of a story, or whether a machine had done it. Really, really powerful technology, fundamentally changing our world. Of course, immediately everybody hears about this story, and you may have been having these thoughts yourself, discussing this with your friends and your family. Everybody goes to this thought that this incredible technology, this powerful technology, is going to take jobs away from humans. There's some truth to that, but it's sort of exaggerated, that story. But it's an important issue to have in the front of your mind as you're thinking about your jobs and your opportunities going forward. It's important for you to realize that a lot of industries and a lot of jobs within industries are going to slowly and then quickly disappear in the next few years. And for you, with 20, 30, 40, maybe even more working years ahead of you, you've really got to skate to these jobs and industries of the future, the opportunities of the future. And that's what I'm going to talk about quite a bit in a moment. But clearly, because of the pandemic, clearly because of COVID, all of these insecurities that people are feeling around jobs, because of the robots, because of AI, are just heightened, again, just accelerated, because people are worried, how am I going to survive in a world of smart machines and a world where perhaps the pandemic really fundamentally alters the opportunities in the immediate future. This is the classical period of huge disruption, and you may hear this phrase, the fourth industrial revolution. You may be reading about this, you may be studying this. This is going to be a very, very disruptive next few years, next few decades, a disruptive century ahead of us, because as we all know from reading history, the previous industrial revolutions have been extremely disruptive as well. What's to say that the next one is going to be even more disruptive in the next few years? So this is really the agenda that we study at the Center for the Future of Work in Cognizant. This is the areas we research. And this is a report that we put out a couple of years ago, which is still extremely relevant, called From and To, Everything You Wanted to Know About the Future of Your Work But Were Afraid to Ask, where we look at the from, where we are now, and the to, where we're going to. This report and everything I'm going to be talking about today is all freely available, openly available, no sign up or anything on Cognizant's website. Please do check it out if this is of interest to you. And I thought I'd just share a couple of ideas from this report where we lay out 42 trends across things like the way we work, the technology we use, the tools of work, what work looks like, the culture of work, some of the problems and challenges with work. I'll just mention a few of these, and then again, it's important to think about these as the context for the opportunities that you're going to try and chase after you leave BI. So again, this is the context for the changing nature of work at the moment. And think all the time as I'm talking about the to, where this is going, more so than the from, where the world is today. This is one we talk about quite a lot at the Center for the Future of Work, the transition from the thumb to the voice. You know, we're all typing or using our thumbs to text or whatever, but the big wave of technology just bubbling up right now is voice. And I mentioned Siri and Alexa earlier on. We're talking to technology more and more. You're talking to Siri, you're talking to your car, you're talking to your TV. Soon we'll be talking to every type of technology and developing the underlying technology to do that, the hardware, the software, the systems, the processes. That's going to be a huge wave in tech and business for the next few years. I always kind of jokingly ask the rhetorical question, did you ever see Captain Kirk type? Of course you didn't. You know, in science fiction, people haven't been typing for a long time. They talk to technology. And so even though we're in this digital age, the irony, of course, is that our digits are going away. We won't need them so much anymore because we'll be just talking to technology. Microsoft call the voice platform the new runtime. And if you're a hard techie person, you'll know what that means. That's basically voice is the new platform on which we're going to develop new applications, new systems, new functionality. This is going to be a very big deal for all of us in the next few years. Another big change in technology at the moment is the transition into the no-code era. And again, if you're following technology closely, you're probably beginning to hear about no-code or low-code. Again, this is a very big deal where technology and systems that were very, very hard to manage and create and build and optimize a generation ago are now becoming simpler and easier to do. You've probably heard the phrase that software is eating the world, and that's true, but software is eating software as well. And the development of software is becoming more plug and play, drag and drop. It's becoming more like a like a PowerPoint environment where you're mixing pre-developed assets into the experience that you want to create. Again, from a job perspective, from an opportunity perspective, getting involved with some of the new companies on the front end of this wave, that's going to be a very, very big deal, I think. It's going to change the IT industry fundamentally. And if you can be on the to side of that, that's going to be a good run, I think, for anybody interested in that. We talk about the aesthetics of work, the sort of changing culture of work. And we're all living through this at the moment, the transition from the suit to the hoodie. And this may seem trivial to some people, but it's not actually, because this has been going on for some time in big businesses around the world, in Europe, in the US. We sort of think that it's the traditional people in suits who are calling the shots, who are in charge of big businesses. But increasingly, that's not the case. It's the engineers, it's the people in the hoodies who are really driving businesses forward. As one example, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, one of the biggest financial services institutions in the world, is a hoodie rather than a suit. He's a part-time DJ on the weekends because he comes out of that engineering software culture rather than the sort of traditional Wall Street trading infrastructure. Again, if you can be on the right-hand side of this transition, the two, you're going to do very well. If you're on the more conservative business, kind of traditional suit side of the equation, I think that's going to be less interesting for you going forward in terms of your career. And of course, because of COVID, this trend, which had been bubbling up for a number of years, is being accelerated because we're all having this work at home experience. You're seeing inside of my house, it's all much more casual, much more informal. I think when we go back to the office, which we will do one day, we'll want this more casual, more informal environment. We won't want to go back to the suit and to be all buttoned up and sort of cautious again. This is a permanent change in the culture of big businesses. And again, you as younger people embody this, embrace this, make this real within the organizations. And again, you're going to be on the right side of the change that I'm talking about. We talk about the meaning of work, the problems and challenges with work. And again, this is something that folks in Scandinavia have clearly been driving for a number of years now, the transition from a kind of fossil fuel-based industry into this more green, more environmentally friendly industry and future. And our phrase here is from green is red to green is green. And what I mean by that is on the balance sheets of most organizations, investments in becoming green are seen as a cost. They're red. But we're now transitioning into an era in which green is becoming green. Green is about money. In the US, they call it little green, money. This is going to be a huge commercial opportunity. And a lot of organizations are waking up to this. So again, if you can orientate yourself to being on the two side of this equation, it's going to be a big deal. What we're seeing really is sort of the Greta Thunberg agenda be embraced by serious sort of big business people around the world, because we've all realized that, again, through COVID, that this pause that we've all experienced where we're not traveling so much is giving the world a chance to heal again. The folks in Hollywood can see the Hollywood sign again down in LA, and the folks in northern India can see the Himalayas for the first time in a generation because greenhouse gases are sort of reduced. So I think coming out of COVID, coming out of a new US administration, this is going to be, again, a very, very big deal. Going to drive the industries of the future, the jobs of the future, the opportunities for you of the future. So check out this report, as I say, freely available on our website, and focus on the to rather than the from, and you'll get a sense of where the world is going. And another series of reports that we've done, again, freely available to you, building on this context, this sort of scenery, if you like, of how the world is changing, are these reports that we call Jobs of the Future. We've done 4 of them now. So there are 84 jobs of the future, which we've written in the form of a job description. So you can see in detail what the qualifications for this job of the future would be, what the experience would be, what the job itself would entail. And they've got a lot of interest recently. We just did the latest of these reports, 21 HR jobs, human resource jobs of the future. And this was featured in the Harvard Business Review just before Christmas. So I think a lot of people are interested in these reports because it gives them in some real detail what the new jobs being created are going to be to replace the jobs that go away through automation, through machine learning, through AI, etc. And again, it's important to understand these trends in the context of these big new industries being created because of the new technology, being created by the change in attitudes. And I thought I'd just mention a couple of these again. Again, this is really the sort of agenda of things that we research and write about at the Center for the Future of Work. Just a couple of them to give you a sense of how we think about the opportunity that's being created. Clearly, biotech. Nothing could be more important than biotech at the moment as we try to develop vaccines for COVID and then, of course, beyond, and then try to scale them out. And clearly, the biotech industry has come a long way in a very short period of time, since Watson and Crick, right through to CRISPR, if you're following CRISPR-9, which is, in a way, arguably an even bigger story than artificial intelligence. I mean, this is really where humans begin to play God. I mean, crazy as that sounds, that's really what's going on. If you know the American journalist Walter Isaacson, who's written lots of fantastic books about Steve Jobs, biographies about Steve Jobs and Einstein, and many other famous figures of history. His new book, just coming out soon, is about the woman who has developed the CRISPR technology. That's how big a deal this is. And Bill Gates was up at Harvard a little while ago, and a smart kid asked him if he was going to drop out of Harvard, today, what would he do? Would he go and write office productivity software like he did in the 1980s? And he said, no, I would go into biotech. It's a thrilling time to be in biology. Developments in biosciences are moving faster than ever. That was in 2017. And I'm sure many of you have seen his speech, his TED talk from 2015, when he was talking about the impact of a coronavirus or some type of virus changing the world. So if you can orientate yourself into biotech when you leave BI, I think that's going to be a huge area, continue to be a huge area, a huge opportunity for you personally. Another thing that we are really interested in, maybe you are too, is virtual and augmented reality. And a lot of people look at these technologies and they're a bit cynical, a bit skeptical, kind of laugh a bit. Some of this stuff looks a bit crazy and a bit clunky, and maybe you've played around with it and it's not quite as exciting and interesting as maybe you've been led to believe. But I always put this, VR and augmented reality, in the context of thinking about history and thinking about these two guys who are the Lumiere brothers, who in France in the 1860s invented the underlying technology of the movies, of cinema. And the question I have in my mind, and I think it's a very important question for you as well, as you think about your career and you think about your future and where it's going to go, is could these guys in 1860, with their kind of pretty crude, pretty simple technology, could they have imagined Iron Man? Of course they couldn't. They couldn't imagine where the technology would go. They couldn't have imagined all of the jobs created around the world, in Hollywood and Bollywood and in Italy and London, where they make the James Bond movies, and New Zealand, where they make the Lord of the Rings movies. All of the jobs, all of the opportunity, technical jobs, creative jobs, business jobs. I don't think they could. And I think that's the way to think about VR, that this is the beginning of a huge period of innovation in the type of technology that's going to become very, very familiar to us in the next few years. Goldman Sachs think that VR could be bigger than TV itself. We're not going to buy TVs anymore. We'll just be experiencing cinema and movies and shows within a VR environment. I think it's potentially arguable that in a few years we'll be having this type of meeting rather than on Zoom. We'll be having it in a VR environment. Tim Cook from Apple thinks that the intermediary step of augmented reality could be even bigger than virtual reality. This notion of a physical informational overlay on the world. You saw this a few years ago, I'm sure, Pokemon Go. That kind of model where we're overlaying technology into the real world. And some people looked at that and thought that was a joke, thought that was crazy. And oh my God, the world's gone to hell in a handbasket. But I started writing about cloud computing over 20 years ago, when I used to be a Gartner analyst. I was the first analyst to write about the cloud back in 1997. And people used to think the cloud was a joke. I, for many years, would be talking about cloud computing and, oh, this is ridiculous. We have our own data center. But fast forward to today, and the cloud has changed every aspect of work, of business, of life. You know, we're using the cloud now. Where would we be without the cloud if the coronavirus had struck and we weren't able to interact like this? So it may seem like a joke. I don't think it is. I think it's a very big deal. And again, for you personally, in your career, your next steps, if you can orientate yourself towards a trend like this, I think you're going to do very well. Now, diving a little bit more deeply into these jobs of the future reports, again, I don't have time to go through many of them, but I mean, I'll mention very quickly 3 of them. This is a big deal. The notion of auditing algorithms for bias. We don't want to live in a world of black boxes where algorithms make decisions about whether you should have a heart operation or not, or you should get a mortgage or not, but we don't really know why the algorithm has made that decision. So auditing algorithms, that's going to be a very big job of the future. Understanding the risks that machines create when we get into a self-driving car, understanding that risk, managing that risk, making sure as an organization that we're not liable for any potential risk and litigation beyond a crash in a self-driving car. That's going to be a very big job of the future. And then you may laugh when you see this, but this is becoming a big job of the future because we've been dreaming about flying cars for 100 years in science fiction. They're now becoming real. Sergey Brin, the founder of Google, spends all of his time developing a flying car at his company Kitty Hawk. And about 2 weeks ago, the Dutch government gave the license for the world's first commercial flying car. So this is coming true, and the jobs that waves like this, opportunities that are created by these new technology trends are going to be very, very big. I think, and this is somebody in their late 50s talking to you, looking back at my career, what I've experienced in the last 35 years or so, is that the wave is bigger than the board. And what I mean by that is that we're the boards. We are the boards that we put on a wave, and the wave is bigger than the board. If you put your board on the right wave, virtual reality, biosciences, space, flying cars, you're going to have a hell of a ride in the rest of your career. If you put your board on a wave that's already crested, journalism as one example, not a growth industry, no matter how brilliant you are, you're not going to have a great ride. Of course, if you're a brilliant person and you put your board on a big wave, well, then maybe you're the next Jeff Bezos. And I hope you'll remember me when you've got a couple of $100 billion in your back pocket in 20 years' time. The board is bigger than the wave. Look around for the industries, the growth industries, the big waves of the future. Orientate yourself towards those. Put your board, your skills on that, and you'll have a good time, I think. So I've thrown a lot at you, I know, and I'm going to pause in a moment and see if you guys have got some questions and thoughts. I'd love to kick those around. I finish where I start, that this strange thing is a really, really big deal. And I don't think we're going to fully understand all of the changes that this is going to bring into our world for a long time to come. Obviously, we're going to go back to the office one day and the office will probably look different. But the fundamental structural changes of how we work, how we live, it's going to take us a while to figure those out. And ultimately, while we're doing that, it's going to be the adaptable people. It's going to be the people who can pivot, the people who can change course, who can pick up a new wave if they sense that the wave they're on currently is kind of cresting and falling apart. It's the people who can change quickly, be nimble, move around, who are going to do well. It sort of feels in a way like a lot of stuff's kind of burning down at the moment, doesn't it? The forest is burning down. Lots of people losing their jobs, their livelihoods, their careers, unfortunately losing their lives. I mean, this is a very, very tough time, an existentially tough time, as I've already said. But we also know that the story of the forest fire is that after it's through, it releases new growth, clearing out the big old trees, letting more sunlight, more breeze through into the undergrowth. that's what creates the new shoots, the green shoots of new opportunity. And if I have one final overriding thought, again, for folks like yourselves, people in your 20s and 30s, at the early stage of your career, it's to go after the green shoots, not to try and put the old world back together, save the old trees, but it's to orientate yourself towards these new green shoots of opportunity. And if you can pick the right one, if you can understand where the technology is going, how it's going to intersect with a need, a business need, a societal need, then I think it's going to be an incredible ride in the next few years as we really do move into a fourth industrial revolution, becomes more and more meaningful and more material for us all. We're on the cusp of this great digital build out, and digital is becoming sort of the fundamental foundational element in which everything that can go online is going to go online. If you can put your board on that wave, you're going to do great. So I know, as I say, Adrian, I've thrown a lot at people, and I hope I've done a little bit of taking people from a state of, oh my God, confusion into a state of and I'll pause there and see if people would like to get into some questions and discussion.
Yes, of course, we have a couple of interesting questions, so I'll just start right away. We started with the first question here, talking about job polarization or job upgrading. Which do you think will dominate next 10 years?
Well, I think both. They're not mutually exclusive in the way I would look at that. Job polarization is a manifestation of, if you live in a world full of technology, in a world of code, in some of the areas I've been talking about, there's never probably been a better time to be alive, because those things are becoming more and more important, central to society, to our world. If you can create a job in one of these industries of the future, then you're going to have a great ride. Conversely, if you're living in an analog world, if you're living in a world that isn't particularly infused with technology, where you don't really know very much about technology, where you don't have any STEM skills, any math-based capability, then it's going to be a tough ride, I think. And so that polarization, people are talking at the moment about a K-shaped recovery, economic recovery, where the upper side of the K, that's businesses that have a sophisticated digital channel to market, and other organizations that don't, stores, supermarkets, department stores, not really fully embracing online, are going downwards. I think the same is true for an individual. There's going to be that polarization, and digital is going to be the sort of crucial determinant of the two. But the second point is also right, that job upskilling for everybody, even if you're in tech now or if you're not in the sort of digital world, that is ultimately the answer to the issue. Societies, individuals, companies have always risen and fallen through history, primarily related to their attitude towards education. And so we need to educate current people, the next generation of people, for the jobs of the future, the skills of the future, the demands of the future, which are increasingly going to be technological. So yeah, I think we're all facing a world in which we do have to upskill ourselves. There's a well-known journalist in the UK, in the US, called Kevin Kelly, who was the founding editor of Wired magazine, who said that the future of work rests on this phrase, X plus AI, where X is whatever it is you do. You're a doctor, you're a politician, you're a teacher. If you can add this next generation smart software, AI, to that X, then you're going to get to that next threshold of performance. You're going to upskill yourself in doing that. And I think that's a nice, clear, simple way to think about the challenge that we all face.
And we can jump to the next question, if may I. Dear Benjamin, in order to translate into the green solutions, you need years of red technology energy that will be the backbone that might take us years to be able to move away from the old norms. In your personal experience, respectively, what can we do to breach the global wealth gap? And in the world where 48% jobs will disappear, that represents a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. These are big structural, existential, I keep using that word, existential challenges. Economic inequality, global climate change. These are big structural issues for the world to solve, and they will take a long time to solve. There's no doubt about that. I'm simply advocating in this session today to younger people listening that it's up to you to be on the right side of history, to be on the to side of my from and to equation, to develop these new technologies, these new industries, the new societal norms, the new social contract for the social network. It's up to you to lead, because as Greta Thunberg says, people of my generation have struggled to deal with these issues. In her words, we failed to deal with these issues. I think there's a growing understanding and awareness around the world that radical material change is required, that we can't go on with business as usual. Political leaders here in the US and in the UK increasingly understand that. Business leaders, the people who tend to go to Davos for the World Economic Forum this week of the year normally, they understand it. And again, I think that's why, from an opportunity perspective, thinking about this transition from green as red, a cost, to green as green, a commercial opportunity, this new green rush, you know, like the gold rush in the 1860s, this is the green rush. Getting into those areas, making that material, proving ultimately the commercial argument that this is the future. I think it's not going to be easy. I'm certainly not of the opinion it's going to be easy, and there are forces of conservatism, of vested interests that don't want to change. That's completely true. But as I say, for people listening to this now, I think it would be more fun to be on the right side of history rather than trying to hold history back.
There you go. I was in mute. Thank you very much for your interesting talk and topic. How do you see the future of skill set fit into the future work? Many articles mention the future skill being much interpersonal skills like empathy, listener, creativity. How do you see this fits into the future work?
Yes, we have a model that we call the 3 E's model, where we think about skills that are enduring, eroding, or emerging, 3 E's. And I think a lot of the a lot of the enduring skills of the future are in fact the skills that we've been important to mankind since the beginning of history. And empathy would certainly be one of those. I always think that if you're going to go and see a lawyer in the future, and you know that the work is really being done by a machine, by an AI bot, then that human lawyer who's charging you $1,000 an hour, 1,000 euros an hour, better be a very nice human being. They better give you a good meeting. They better ask you, you know, how are things going? What's the issue? How can I help you? How's the family? Have that empathetic human-based relationship. Because if they don't, then we're just going to go to the machine. And I don't think ultimately people want to go to the machine. I don't think you want your kids to be taught by a robot teacher. I don't particularly want to go and see a robot doctor. We want to have human relationships, human connections, human experiences. But the technology can allow that lawyer to create a more empathetic human relationship because the machine is doing all the tedious administration, all the routine, automatable work for him or her. So I think that's a great point that the questioner makes. I think one of the jobs of the future I haven't talked about today could be what I call the next generation of the Swiss finishing school, where we teach humans to be better humans, where we teach them to be nicer, funnier, more loving, kinder human beings, because that is ultimately the enduring human quality that we are going to continue to want into the future.
Thank you very much. Your next question. Irrespectively of our disciplines, what is the one soft skill that we should invest in the next 30 minutes of a day in the late 40s years of age to get the right board? And secondly, would you probably speak about the timeline that you have, do you see these changes happening that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a great, well, two great questions. If I was to focus on one soft skill, one human skill, it would be simply to improve one's ability to listen. It's often been said that God or whoever intelligent designer created us gave us one mouth and two ears, and we should use them in that ratio. And the simple truth is that people don't. People talk too much. People don't listen to other people. And I think when you come across somebody in business or in life that does listen to you, it creates a profound impact on you. It can be very, very attractive. It can be very, very moving. It can be very, very important in creating alignment, shared vision, an ability to work together. So I know that sounds perhaps optimistic and idealistic, but I think that is the case, that we can all practice and improve our listening skills, to hear what other people say, to recognize what other people say, to acknowledge what other people say, rather than just allow our minds to be constantly whirling and thinking about what we're going to say next. So that would be one thing I would say. And then remind me, Adriana, what's the second part of the question?
What timeline do you think?
Timeline, yeah. Well, of course, all of the trends, in a way, are subject to different timelines. Biotech, I mean, is urgent now, going to continue to be important for a long period of time. Virtual reality is developing. It's not really so urgent. It's not so mission critical now, but it's the wave of the next 20, 30, 40 years. So I think you have to look in a little bit more detail at a lot of the different trends that I've been talking about. In the Jobs of the Future reports that I've mentioned a few times, again, which you can see up on our website, there is a timeline within those jobs. It's the next 10 years. So all of these jobs emerge within the next 10 years, some sooner than later. But yes, check out that report and you'll see that timeline. And again, you can begin to think about how your interests, your skill sets, your ambitions intersect with these big waves, these big changes, and again, how you can get your board on the right wave.
Thank you very much. I'll go to the next question. This one is interested because I think we are quite affected by it.
Yeah.
How do you see AI affecting in future the educational system?
Yeah. No, it is a great question. And we've written quite a bit about this. And I think this is a very big deal. I think this is going to change how a teacher teaches and how a student learns. And already you begin to see examples of curricula changing, pedagogy changing. There was a big article, people who are interested in this might want to check out and find, big article in the Financial Times, I think 2 weeks ago, about how Eton School in the UK, which is the best school in the UK, so they claim. I didn't go there, so I don't believe that. Are using AI in the way that they teach their kids. And we've written about an organization in the US called New Classrooms, who are using AI quite extensively to mark homework, to set coursework, to adjust coursework for an individual, recognizing that in a class of 30 people or 400 people, everybody's going to be at certain different levels on their journey, and adjusting the next day's curricula for that person. So I think it's a very, very big deal. And just one final thought about AI within education. I think a lot of people are kind of nervous about trying to leverage machine learning AI within their work, within their education, their ongoing education. I don't think it's as hard as people imagine. I often say to folks, just go on YouTube and put in the search bar machine learning 101, and you can find hundreds and hundreds of courses on machine learning taught by some of the best academics, professors around the world, all for free. You don't need to, maybe this isn't something I should say to BI, but you don't need to go to a university or a college as much as you used to be able to pick up the skills of the future, because so many of them are kind of available online. So yeah, AI is a very, very big deal from every different perspective within education, I believe.
Well, we still have 20 questions to answer. Don't think we'll have the opportunity to answer all of them in 2 minutes, but I can at least merge two. There's a person that is asking whether you can also refer the impact of AI into the finance technology and the retailing industry.
Yeah, well, in finance, it's huge already. 8 out of the top 10 hedge funds in the US are already algorithmically traded. No humans involved in picking stocks, all being done by machine learning. So it's a huge deal there. There's a huge arms race for talent in the finance world. If you individual, somebody listening has got capability around AI, yeah, if you can take those skills into finance, that would be a very smart thing to do. I heard from a CEO of a leading AI startup recently that the starting salary for AI PhDs out of Stanford, so 28-year-old people, the starting salary is $5 million. So yeah, that's a big wave. Go and get your board on that wave. Retail, well, we're seeing that right now, aren't we? We're living that right now. Stores all around the world, the UK, the US, I'm not sure if it's the same in Norway, but are crumbling because they hadn't really adapted to the ways of digital technology of the last 10, 15 years. A retail store without a sophisticated online channel at the moment is basically dead in the water. And you look at the growth of Amazon, making Jeff Bezos the world's richest person, the first $200 billion man soon. I mean, extraordinary. So again, mass personalization, understanding your digital fingerprints. You like this, so you're going to like that. All of that kind of experiential, data-driven, algorithmically driven retail experience. Yeah, that's the future. And again, if you can help an organization double down on that, improve that, extend that, grow that, or help a company that's struggling to get into that world. Yeah, a lot of opportunity in that area.
Well, then I have to say thank you very much, everybody, for this wonderful webinar. Ben, I appreciate very much the time that you took from Boston. Lucy as well, thank you very much for your time. And everybody, if your questions weren't answered and you still wish to have an answer from Ben, you can send us an email to alumni@bi.no, and we will forward the questions to Lucy and Benjamin. You'll get the answer soon. Thank you very much for this afternoon. We'll see you soon again.